welcome to another edition of Community Conversations. I am so pleased today to have a very dear friend and a very special guest joining us, Charles Dickerson. Charles is the founder, executive director, and the conductor of the Inner City Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles, the largest majority African-American orchestra in the entire nation. I first met Chuck about 10 years ago when I got a call from then LA County Supervisor Zev Yaroslavsky, who said, Jonathan, you need to know Chuck Dickerson. You need to know Isola. And here we are today, many years later, and really celebrating their extraordinary work. So thank you, Chuck, for being with us today. How are you doing?
Well, Jonathan, I'm doing well. And first of all, before anything further, thank you so much for having me as a guest on your wonderful brand new podcast. I congratulate you and all that you do. You know, it's amazing to me how many people in this city, in this county know you, and you are just so admired and well thought of and well respected, even by me. So, so thank you for having me, man.
Well, I am hugely flattered, Chuck. You know, we've known each other for a long time. We've become good friends and family. And
that's right. Thank you.
And you know, the work that you have done and continue to do is simply extraordinary. And I want to talk a little bit about that today, obviously. But to begin, I want to ask you about you, Chuck. Tell me, remind me, where did you grow up? And tell me about that experience, your younger years, and what really led you on the path to doing the work you're doing today.
That's so kind of you to ask. Jonathan, I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. That is the home of my mother. And we lived there until I was almost 7 years old. At 7 years old, we moved to Compton, California. And that was a different Compton than it is today. It was a city in transition, really moving from a predominantly Anglo or white community to a predominantly African-American community. And we were one of the families that was involved in that transition. Right after the Watts riots of 1965, my parents moved us to Altadena, and that became the home, the family homestead from that point forward. And I know you live in Altadena now, so I know you appreciate the beauty of that place.
Indeed.
And so, Jonathan, I took a diversion. I started college as a music major, and then I went to Washington, D.C. to go to school, and I got a job working for a United States senator. It changed my life. I ended up working for him for 6 years. I ended up going to Howard University and getting my undergraduate degree, and then going on to American University, where I obtained a Juris Doctorate. So I came to California, came back home, took the bar, and practiced law for a long time. But all during this time, I've been conducting church choirs. And the way that Isola got started is as a result of my having conducted church choirs. I was the director of music at Holman United Methodist Church here in Los Angeles. And every Christmas and every Easter, we would do a major work that required, or that called for orchestra. And I would usually call members of an organization called the Southeast Symphony to come and be the members of the orchestra that played with us. Well, in 2004, 2006. Yeah, 2000, I think I got it right. Yeah. No, 2004, the then conductor of the Southeast Symphony resigned. And my dear friends whom I had frequently called to come and play with us at Holman recommended that I take over that job. And I was kind of flattered to be asked to do it. But man, I think anybody who loves orchestral music and can do orchestral music and is offered a position to be an orchestral conductor and doesn't take the job is crazy. So although I probably am crazy, I took the job. And I've been doing, I stayed with the Southeast Symphony through 2011. But in 2009, a group of young African-American high school students, musicians, who play quite well, frankly, approached me and asked me if I would work with them that summer. We ended up doing that, and boy, that blossomed. We started with 9, Jonathan.
Wow.
Then we got 20, by the end of the first summer, we had 24 with very little recruiting at all, if any. Mm-hmm. We put on a little recital, it went quite well. And then in 2011, we got invited to go play for the unveiling of the Martin Luther King statue in Washington, D.C.
I remember that, yeah.
And when we did that, it kind of let me know, well, I guess this is going to be a permanent thing. And I got my dear friend and my former law partner, Stan Sanders, to incorporate us and get our 501c3. And we've been going ever since. And what you see behind me now is a photo of our orchestra taken not long ago. And there's 110 young people on that stage with us. And that's typically about the number that we serve today. So there's a thumbnail up to date, up to the minute report.
I love it. I love that photograph. And of course, I don't know many arts ensembles, music ensembles that regularly perform at the Walt Disney Concert Hall. By most accounts, one of, if not the greatest concert halls in the world. And of course, I know, Chuck, you've taken the orchestra to multiple venues throughout Southern California, and as you mentioned, Washington, D.C. And it's just a very, very wonderful, exciting thing. You and I both share a great love of symphonic music,
Yeah.
of the classical repertoire. And we, as we've discussed many times, it's an art form that is fragile, that doesn't enjoy the same kind of support and engagement that, more popular artists do. And talk a little bit about, you shared this with me before, the value of this experience to the young people who participate with the Inner City Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles.
Wow, Jonathan, that's a huge, huge issue. And thanks for asking about it. Regrettably, first, there's 2 or 3 points I'd like to make. First, regrettably, there are just not a lot of programs that exist within the majority African-American community that are really geared towards strengthening the real positive values of life. All too often, if you watch the news, if you watch the media, all you see is when you see pictures of Black people, they're generally associated with something negative. And that's an image that just gets portrayed throughout our community. But it's it's not a false picture at all, because we know that young people in our community strive for the highest standards, just as they do in any other community. Well, there was no orchestra program in our community, and yet there were, as you can see behind me in the picture, there are just hundreds of young people, Black young people and Latino young people, who actually play orchestral instruments and are starved to play the symphonic repertoire. So that's one point that I'd like to say about the value that it is to the community. Number 2, we find ourselves frequently now being called upon to accompany church choirs and perform major works with them. This takes our young people into settings that they might not otherwise have an opportunity to be in. So that's another great value for them. But, Jonathan, you're a musician, you play the piano, you've played pretty much all your life. You know the value of practice.
Indeed.
You know what it means to have to sit down and work toward perfecting something and not get up until you have perfected it. You know the self-confidence that being able to sit in front of a group of people and play brings into you. The same transfers over to these kids. They get to play in front of their community as the absolute best young people in their community. What self-confidence does that give to them? How does that lift them up in terms of their self-discipline, their discipline of practice, the discipline of wanting to achieve perfection and do something right, and therefore the dedication to do something over and over and over again until you get it right? These are all values that we infuse within the young people that we have the privilege of working with, just as a result of having created this organization.
No, it's awesome. I mean, you've shared with me that the value is equally not just making music and performing, but the values that it instills in young people of hard work, of discipline, of citizenship, of camaraderie, of fellowship, all those things that we need to learn when we're young.
Let me share one other thing with you about this, Jonathan, if I may. And this is something subtle that maybe only conductors understand, but you've conducted the orchestra, so you know what
I sure have.
When you play orchestral music, there are times when the violins take the melody and the cellos take the harmony. And then there are times when the cellos take over and they have the melody, and let's say the horns have harmony. And then there are times when the clarinets have the melody and the oboes have harmony. And the point I'm making here is that by playing this very kind of music, our young people not only learn the values I've already identified, but they know now it's my time to speak up. Let me speak up and do it well. Now it's my time to be supportive of another area, of another constituency, so to speak. those very values transfer over into life, on jobs. Okay, I'm the boss now. I've got to step up and make sure that everything is right. Okay, now I'm in a support role. Let me step back and make sure that the boss is firmly supported by me. You don't get that kind of teaching when you just go out and do even just individual solo playing. So there's that's a unique value that I think is learned in an orchestral setting. And these young people, the young people that I have the privilege of working with, that very value is instilled within them, and they practice it in just about every aspect of their lives.
It's a beautiful thing to see, and I've gotten to know a number of the young kids. I call them kids, but they're starting to grow up.
Yeah, and I
Who've
love you,
played.
Jonathan.
Oh well, no, I love them. They're beautiful, and they've gone on to incredibly distinguished uh, uh, educational opportunities, careers, and I think in no small part to your mentorship and the experience that they've had at Isola.
Thank you.
One of the no, truly, one of the other things that struck me, of course, Chuck, I know you are a distinguished member of the board of directors of the League of American Orchestras, a very important organization in our nation for orchestras. And they commissioned a study a number of years ago that
Yeah.
determined the number of musicians in major U.S. orchestras who were people of color, and it was less than 2%. And
That's
by the
right.
way, that extended equally to staff.
That's
And
right.
of course, we know recently that there have been studies made of the number of board members, governance of major arts institutions, and it is candidly appalling the lack of diversity on those boards. And it's also amusing to watch, not amusing. It's gratifying, but long overdue to watch them scrambling to try and correct that these days in the wake of the George Floyd murder.
While you're raising that point, let me share with you. This is your podcast, so you usually are interviewing other people and talking to them about what they do. Let me talk just 1 second, about what you do, Jonathan. You've been on our board now for 10 years, at least, and you swim against the tide as regards to the numbers of people of Anglo descent who are serving on boards of primarily African American or Latino or boards of institutions of color. So it's a two-way street, and while it is very important that people of color serve on institutions that are not primarily institutions of color, it's also important that we institutions of color have people like you and others who are willing to give of your time and your treasure to see to it that organizations like us succeed. So I'm bragging about you, and I want to thank you for your service.
Well, Chuck, thank you. That's high praise indeed, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think that our country is at an inflection point now. I think that we haven't seen since certainly the LA riots, the Watts riots, the 1960s, where people have finally said, the majority of people have finally said enough.
Yeah.
We need to come together, and that might sound a little corny and a little sentimental, but it's true.
It is.
And one of the really specific things that you are leading is the Isola Fellowship Program, which I think is absolutely extraordinary. It's something everybody should be screaming about, because not only is it exciting, but it's very powerful in terms of what it strives to accomplish. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Thanks so much for that, Jonathan. So yes, you're right. In 2016, the League of American Orchestras issued a report in which it was indicated that while African Americans make up 13% of the general population, only 1.8% of the workforce of American orchestras is comprised of African Americans. Similar numbers with Latinos. Latinos make up about 13% of the population, just as African Americans do, and they represent only 2.5% of the workforce of American orchestras. So those of us in the industry, myself included, recognizing this problem, have tried to take certain steps to make the numbers or percentages of people who are involved in our business generally reflect what our percentages of the population. We have learned as a result of our studies that one of the items that has kept African Americans and Latinos from being parts of major American orchestras is they do not do well in an audition process. So we have created a program through which we seek to increase the chances of African American and Latino young emerging musicians to win an audition in an American orchestra by specifically having a fellowship program where they come and work with us for a couple of years and specifically work toward preparing for the audition. I need to say that this is a program that is generously funded by the Andrew Mellon Foundation. There's no way we could do what we do in this regard without the support of that great foundation. I also, she probably wouldn't want me to say it, but I want to call out Susan Fader, one of the administrators of the Mellon Foundation, who sees to it that programs like this around the country succeed. There are now about 7 or 8 programs like this. Ours is the only one that is run by a primarily African-American institution or institution of color. And we're proud that we do it in connection with Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra and the Thornton School of Music at USC with Dean Rob Cudiera.
You know, it's one of the things, of course, I love everything about Isola, but it's one of the things that so stands out for me. And when you talk about collaboration, Chuck, you have really demonstrated how to do it and how to do it so well because you've engaged with USC and Thornton School, with the LA Chamber Orchestra, and most recently with the Colburn School.
Yes.
We now have a program with as well. And, you know, this is against a time in our world where we've dealt with COVID, where we've dealt with so much tumult in American politics and community. And you and the team have just plowed ahead and kept going. And you know, one of the things that I know we're working on, and I think it's timely to talk about, will be Isola's, I guess we could call it the orchestra's response to COVID-19,
yes.
To what has impacted our world to such an extraordinary degree. We are hopefully emerging from it today, but it has exacted a tremendous toll. And I know that we are having a concert.
That's right.
The contract has been signed.
That's right.
On March 26, 2022. And I would love for you to share with our audience what that special occasion is going to be.
Thanks for that, Jonathan. Just before I do, you mentioned the Colburn School, and I'd like to share with the audience what we're doing with them. You've heard us talk now about the foundation, or rather about the fellowship program, which really is for emerging professional musicians. These are young people who've already finished college, and they're generally the 20 to 25-year-old age range. With the Colburn School, and we're just delighted and honored to be working with them now, we're running a program in Los Angeles Unified School District inner city schools where there either is no music program or the music program is exceedingly bare, and where reading scores of the young people who are at these schools are low. And what we are doing is we go in and we teach after school 3 days a week. We teach music and literacy. The music is twofold. It's about theory, that is how to read music, what these dots on the page mean, and that's about learning how to play an instrument. The literacy is literally picking up a book and learning how to read, understand what you have read, and be able to make an argument based on what you've read. And this is for elementary school kids, because we're trying to prepare them to do well, not just in music, but in life. That's the program that we have the privilege of doing with the Colburn School. And we are currently operating that program at the Owen Knox Elementary School on the east side of LA. And we're working right this very minute on expanding that program into other schools. Now, as for the COVID response, it's just horrible what's happened in our country, all the deaths that we have experienced. And we want to memorialize those who we have lost. And in so doing, we have approached our dear friends, our county supervisor, Holly Mitchell, and members of the Los Angeles City Council, Curran Price and Marquise Dawson. And we have decided to actually create and sponsor a program to be performed at the Los Angeles Greek Theater, which is right in Griffith Park, one of the largest parks in our country. At the beautiful Greek. It will be on Saturday, March 26th. It is specifically to honor those who have died as a result of COVID. And it's a free concert to the public. And we want anyone whose life has been impacted by COVID, particularly if you've lost a family member, we want you to come to that concert and be a part of the audience. And if you're interested in getting tickets for it, we're going to be making them available after January 1. And all you have to do is call our office. That's 213-788-4260, 213-788-4260. And you will be able to either speak with someone or leave a message that you would like to have a ticket or tickets to this concert. And they will be granted to you on a first come, first served basis. It's going to be a wonderful evening. And Jonathan, I know that we, with Inner City Youth Orchestra, and you, with your help, are reaching out to some of the major corporations and foundations of this city to ask them to be supportive of this concert. Yes, with their treasure, but also with their attendance and their participation otherwise.
Indeed.
So this is what we're doing.
And, it's particularly moving, Chuck, just to hear you talk about it, because so many people were lost. And families and loved ones were unable to memorialize, celebrate, and honor their lives with a memorial service because of the nature of the quarantine and the isolation. And so this will be a very special event. And of course, the organization, we will take all appropriate safety requirements. And I know that we have some guest artists and guest organizations that will be joining us. And it's going to be a really special night.
The Angel City Chorale will be with us. The San Fernando Valley Master Chorale will be with us. The Pasadena Master Chorale will be with us. At least those three. And I think that we're looking at other organizations that will also be participating. So thank you for reminding me to lift them up as well.
No, really and truly, it's gonna be a great night. And I want to pivot for a second.
Yeah.
I always love to talk about leadership. I've had some great bosses in my career.
Good.
And I've had some who have not been so great.
Haven't we all?
Yes, may I say. And if you're all listening, y'all know who you are.
That's
but would you've managed large organizations, you've led and managed people. Would you talk a little bit about your leadership style, Chuck? And what do you think makes a great leader? And then lastly, who are some of the individuals, current, past, historic, that have influenced and moved you in your life?
Wow. Jonathan, this is not intended to be a commercial for Wells Fargo Bank, but I happen to know that since you worked for Wells, there were times I'd come to your office and I would walk into the bank or into the building and see that Henry Wells had this idea that there's one powerful concept that is the foundation of all good business. His was courtesy. I would reduce it to even a smaller word: be kind. Listen to people. Give care and concern for them. And hopefully 99 times out of 100, they will return that kindness, that listening, and that care and concern with not only good work, but fidelity. They will be kind back to you, and they'll be loyal to you. And we shouldn't just do this as a matter of a business proposition, but hopefully we can just be kind, period. We can listen to people, period, and we can be loyal to people, period. I have a dear friend right now who's in some trouble. He's a public official, and my heart goes out to him because he has been good to us and been good to me, and I want to do the same back to him. I want to be good to him and loyal to him. He's got some difficult waters that he's swimming through, but we still love and care for him. You want to talk about people that have been influential in my life? I have two great heroes that I've talked about since I was old enough to understand who they were. One of them is Jackie Robinson. And that's one of the reasons it's him is because first thing I wanted to be in my life was a professional baseball player. Couldn't hit the curve, so I didn't quite make it.
It's not too late.
Hey, you're right. And another is Thurgood Marshall.
Wow.
I have great respect for what he did and the responsibility that he took upon himself to advocate on behalf of people who were not in a position to advocate for themselves. Those are two of my great heroes that I look to with a lot of respect.
I love it. I think you chose wisely, may I say, for sure. One other question that I always like to ask in these interviews, Chuck, you've contributed so much to our community. And may I say that in terms of a well-respected, beloved, and truly admired leader in Los Angeles, you are that to a T. You're one of the treasures of Los Angeles.
Thank you,
And I don't know anybody who works as hard as you do, and I don't know how you do it. I'm getting a little long in tooth myself, and I just don't bounce around like I used to. But you've got the strength of 10 men, and your lovely, beautiful wife Paula, who's such a wonderful person, a school teacher, again, helping people, touching people's lives. What do you two do for fun? What do you do to blow off steam? What do you do to recreate? What do you do to recharge your batteries? And then I'll put you on spot. What do you love about our city? What are the things and the town that really move you?
Jonathan, I'm very, very fortunate in that I am one person, maybe in the entire world, who gets to do for my work what I love. I love orchestral music. I love directing these kids, man. I love interacting with these young people. And that's what I get to do for my work. That's my primary work. So when you say, what do I do to recreate? It might sound crazy, but I like to go to work. But I'll share something else with you. Just the other day, the Dodgers were in the playoffs. And I will tell you that Paula, who did not grow up in a home where sports was prominent, has recently become a real Dodger fan. And she's starting to understand the game. So what do? We'll go see the Dodgers. What else might we do? Paula really enjoys movies, and she's kind of introduced me to. I grew up in a home where we didn't watch movies, but man, there's some great stories in the movies, and Paula's exposed me to them. We like watching movies. And I particularly like watching the old classic movies, Turner Classic Music movies that come on TV. So to recreate, we do those things. We travel a little bit. Again, Paula did not grow up knowing how to swim. She was intimidated by the water. Recently, she's gotten a lot more comfortable, and so occasionally we'll take a cruise. She was intimidated about getting on a ship because she had a fear, but recently she's kind of overcome that fear. And so every once in a while, we'll go up to Alaska or maybe down to the Caribbean, or even just a trip down the coast into Mexico on a cruise. So those are the kinds of things that she and I do to recreate. Now, what do I love about our city? I said this for years. When particularly this time of year, or maybe a little bit later, January, February, when there's snow in the mountains, in Southern California, this is just about the only place I know in the world where you can perhaps go snow skiing in the morning and water skiing in the afternoon.
Yes.
Because the temperature up in the hills is up in the mountains, up in, not too far away from here, is still cold enough that you can actually have snow and get on the snow. And yet you come down into Lake Elsinore or other places like that, it's still warm enough to put on a bathing suit and go water skiing. So one thing I really like is that, of course, our climate, it allows for the things I just described. That's number one. Number two, I don't know why people, talk about this being a Hollywood town so much, and the implication of that being that people here are snooty and snotty. I think that's a bunch of BS. Mm-hmm. It's been my experience that people here are warm, generous, gracious, kind, and are just as curious about life as I am, which makes interacting with them just wonderful and great. And then number three, I got to say, one of my favorite parts of LA is I kind of referred to it as the Dodgers. That's a great thing. I love the Hollywood Bowl. I love the fact that you occasionally give me your tickets to the Hollywood Bowl. I love the LA Phil, one of the greatest orchestras in the world. And I love the fact that, on a Saturday morning, Paul and I can get up. We live in the southern part of Los Angeles, almost to San Pedro. We can get up that morning, get in the car and drive up to Santa Barbara, have breakfast or brunch, hang around on the ocean, and be back home in time for early evening to take it easy and get ready for the evening. So, this is just what do I love about LA. Gosh, I could keep going.
I know. I concur with everything that you're saying, and let's plan a drive up Santa Barbara for brunch one of these days. One of our favorite places too. Just a beautiful town.
I can go Saturday.
Oh wow! Hey, isn't the orchestra performing up there soon? Or you had something going with the organization up there? Was that pre-COVID or?
It was during COVID. We actually got a call from the Rotary Club of Northern Santa Barbara County, asking us could we make a presentation, and because of COVID, we were able to do it by Zoom, and now they've invited us to come up to that area and present a full concert as soon as things kind of get back to some degree of normalcy. So yes, we will be going to Northern Santa Barbara County in the not too distant future and present a nice concert for them.
Well, I will look forward to that and joining the orchestra and you and Paula on that trip. We're about at our 30-minute limit or time limit, and I think we start thinking about wrapping up. Although I think you and I could keep talking for the rest of the afternoon, which we usually do. When Chuck and I have lunch or breakfast, the sun's usually setting, but by the time we finish, let me just ask you one more thing. Is there anything else you'd like to share? You'd like to say? You'd like to express? You'd like to let our listeners know about before we sign off today?
Well, okay. I would just say let's be encouraged. We're in a time, as you have noted, Jonathan, where people are seemingly at each other's necks. Our country has become so stratified. We don't seem to be getting along very well. Let's be encouraged with each other. Let's take care of each other. Let's love each other. And because I do music, let's listen to and enjoy music together. And maybe that will help to solve some of the tensions within our communities and make our country continue to prosper.
I love it, Chuck. Those are very wise words and words for us to certainly consider and to live by. Well, Chuck, I want to thank you so much for your time and for your extraordinary everything you do for our city. I said you're a treasure of Los Angeles, and you certainly are. Thank you for doing this podcast, and thank you everyone for listening. And Chuck, let's you and I do this again. You'll be a regular guest. We'll just sort of have you drop in pretty often. You're a great friend. You're a great man, and I'm proud to know you. Thank you, Chuck, and I'll see you Saturday.
Look forward to it.
Me too.
All right, buddy.